Optimancers, Chris here.
So fear not, people who love playing warriors. There is juicy stuff coming in the classes themselves. And that's where we want you to be able to turn reliably to some options where you will be dishing out the damage.
Jeremy Crawford promised that warriors would be dishing out the damage despite the loss of the -5 +10 mechanic from the Great Weapon Master and Sharpshooter feats. In my last video, I looked at the new fighter class and champion subclass. There were boosts across the board. More healing, Indomitable got a massive boost, and there's weapon mastery shenanigans. I completed that video where I showed the mathematical calculations comparing a halberd fighter build using our current rules and then the playtest rules, including the new feats versus the old feats, only to find that the new fighter can do so much damage that even if you were to miraculously give the old fighter advantage on all of their attacks, and the new fighter didn't have advantage, that's the only way the old fighter can even keep up with damage. So when it came to the promise that the warriors would be dishing out the damage, the fighter did not disappoint. But that wasn't the only warrior class in the new playtest packet, so today I'm going to analyze the new barbarian and see how it compares. I'm going to start by going over the features, comparing them to the old barbarian, and I'll give you my thoughts about them. And then afterwards, we'll put them to the mathematical test, just like I did with the fighter, and we'll see how this new barbarian stacks up, at least for delivering damage. I do want to warn my viewers, though, that apparently UPS is starting to mishandle mail and packages from non-subscribers. I've asked them to stop, but they aren't listening. So hey, if you aren't subscribed, for your sake, please make sure to do it right away. Let's get started with the design notes. Rage can now be extended with a bonus action each round. Taking damage doesn't extend it. And next page, but forcing someone to make a saving throw does. The focus is now on what you can do, not on what's done to you. Also, the playtest rage can last for 10 minutes rather than 1 minute. Finally, rage is now stopped by the incapacitated condition. Weapon mastery is a new first level feature, giving you new ways to use weapons. Primal knowledge is a new second level feature, which unlocks non-combat functionality for rage. Danger sense has merged with feral instinct, and the limitations on its use have been removed. Indomitable Might has moved from 18th level to 9th level, Brutal Critical has moved from 9th level to 11th level, and its extra damage has been increased and now scales with your level. Persistent Rage has been moved from 15th level to 13th level, Relentless Rage has moved from 11th level to 15th level, and rather than restoring you to 1 hit point, it restores the number of hit points equal to twice your Barbarian level. This change will help prevent the Barbarian from immediately dropping back to 0 hit points. Rage Resurgence is the new 17th level feature that restores the use of Rage whenever you roll initiative. Because of this feature, the Barbarian doesn't gain unlimited uses of Rage at 20th level. Primal Champion has moved from 20th level to 18th level, and its increase was changed from 4 to 2. Epic Boon is the new 20th level feature that increases an ability score, raises that score's maximum to 30, and gives an Epic Boon feat. So those are the notes. Let's see how the actual Barbarian works. Looking at the Barbarian class chart, the Rage column progresses at the same rate except for the old capstone of unlimited rages. Rage damage also progresses at the same rate, and we have a new column. Weapon Mastery, which starts with 2 weapon masteries, then 3 at level 4, and then a 4th at level 10. This is 1 less weapon mastery than fighters get. But honestly, I don't see that being a big deal. You're going to end up using the same mastery most of the time anyways, I think. Hit points, proficiency, and armor training are all unchanged from the old version, and the same thing with the multi-classing rules, all the same as the old version. So let's start with the Barbarian Classic, Rage. If you like playing Barbarians, I think you'll like this a lot. So, like before, it's a bonus action to enter Rage, and you can't Rage in heavy armor. You still get the same damage resistances and Rage damage, except now you can also add your Rage bonus damage to unarmed strikes and non-melee weapon attacks using Rage. Meaning, if you throw a weapon using Strength, you add your Rage bonus. Considering the new thrown weapon rules, this is going to be really nice for Barbarians. You still get advantage on Strength checks and saving throws, and you still can't cast spells while raging or concentrate. There is a wording change here that is going to clarify some interactions. The old version said you can't cast spells or concentrate on them while raging. This just says you can't concentrate. So when you have those features like Trickery, Cleric Scad, or Glamour Bards, where it says a feature requires concentration as if concentrating on a spell, well, they weren't allowed with Rage according to Sage Advice, but this is clear wording, and Sage Advice isn't needed on this anymore. We can't concentrate, we get it. The old rage lasted up to a minute and ended early if you were knocked unconscious. You use your bonus action to end it, or if your turn ended and you didn't attack a hostile creature or take damage. So it's restructured here so that it ends at the end of your current turn, but there's things you can do to extend it. So you can make an attack roll against an enemy, force an enemy to make a saving throw, or take a bonus action to extend your rage. And if you become incapacitated or don heavy armor, the rage is over. You can now maintain a rage up to 10 minutes. That's 10 times as long as before. Okay, so to start with, I don't know why they bother saying the rage ends if you don heavy armor. Heavy armor takes 10 minutes to put on, and there's magic armors that allow you to remove them faster, but none that I'm aware of that allow you to put them on any faster. So is this an issue that they needed to address, and that's why they put it in here? It doesn't seem to me to be a problem or anything. I just don't understand. But maybe it was a problem somewhere and I haven't heard about it. But nitpicking aside, I think this rage feature is fantastic. I think it is just so much better than the 5th edition version. The ability to throw weapons and get their rage bonus damage, I think is terrific. And the duration is a huge improvement. And also the ability to maintain it as a bonus action, rather than like the stupid interactions where barbarians are like hitting themselves to try to maintain their rage. I will be very glad to see that go. And I'll give you a story from personal experience. So the very last time I played a barbarian, we were exploring a haunted castle and we were going from room to room to room, and there were all these like mini encounters in all these rooms. Well, I didn't have rages for that, right? I had like 3 rages. So if we're doing 12 encounters, that means most of the time I couldn't rage. And if I couldn't rage, not only am I giving up the resistance and the bonus to damage, also I couldn't use my subclass features because my subclass required that I was raging to get the benefits. So it really made it so I couldn't do my tricks, and it kind of sucked. And it turned me off. I haven't played a barbarian since. But then I look at this rage, and I think if I had had this rage, I could have maintained rage through the entire castle. And this makes me want to play a barbarian again. And that is, I think, the ultimate test for any feature. If it makes you want to play it, then it's probably a good feature. And I will be playing a barbarian again. I am scheduled on May 24th to do a playtest, and what I chose to play is the barbarian. Partially, in fact largely, because of the changes to rage. Armored defense is unchanged. I've always found this one difficult to use for a barbarian because I tend to want to focus on strength. Still, you can work at 16 here, 18 with the shield, and shields are a much more doable thing for martials now in these playtest rules, and that is nice. Then there's weapon mastery, and it says we can choose 2 weapon kinds of simple or martial melee weapons of our choice. So notice this one is restricted. We cannot select the longbow mastery. We can select melee weapons with the throw-in property though, so we do have some ranged options. And then we can switch out our selections if we want by completing a long rest. Now I've said this on other videos, but I think weapon mastery is a great thing to be adding to martials, so I am glad to see it here for the barbarian as well. What I will say is that there are a couple mastery properties I think are less attractive to barbarians. Vex I think is number 1 because we can get advantage through reckless attack, so Vex is less attractive. Also Graze, if we're always attacking with advantage, then we're probably not missing so much. But the other properties I think all can work pretty well for the barbarian. At 2nd level we get primal knowledge. We get proficiency in another skill of our choice from the barbarian list, and in addition, while our rage is active, and rage out of combat is going to be a thing now with 10-minute durations and bonus action extending, the barbarian can use their strength whenever they make an ability check for acrobatics, intimidation, perception, stealth, or survival. And since we're raging, and all strength checks are made with advantage while we're raging, that means we're not just using our primary ability score for all these skills, we're also going to roll them with advantage. Our passive perception will jump way up as well, if we're proficient. 10 plus proficiency plus strength plus 5. At first when I read this, I found it pretty funny. Like, ooh, I'm so mad now that I'm really quiet. Ooh, I'm so mad now, I can see things really well. However, when I thought about it, primal power means primal. The raging barbarian goes into this animal-like primal state of being, and becomes really good at the things you would think a stalking beast would be good at, including stealth and perception. But I want to say, I love this feature. First off, well done giving barbarians something cool to do outside of combat. But also, once I got my head around what was really happening here, the animalistic nature of the deadly predator of the barbarian is a concept this brings to life big time, and I love it. We also get reckless attack at second level. This allows the barbarian to make attack rolls with advantage on their turn, but attacks have advantage against them until the start of their next turn. It's pretty much the same as the old version, except the same change is rage damage. It no longer needs to be a melee attack, so any attack that uses strength applies, including unarmed strikes and thrown weapons. So if we put 4 things together here, weapon mastery that applies to thrown weapons as well, then we have rage that applies to thrown weapons as well, reckless attack that applies to thrown weapons as well, and finally the new rules for equipping weapons, allowing you to equip a weapon before every attack or as part of every attack. We can see that the barbarian is actually going to be really good at thrown weapons now, and that is terrific. At third level, we get our barbarian subclass, and we have a redesigned berserker subclass in this playtest. So as the barbarian gets subclass features, we'll look at what the berserker gets at that level. I should also mention that the old barbarian subclasses got their features at levels 3, 6, 10, and 14. So there is no change in when subclass features are gained for barbarians with the new playtest. Once again, the berserker gets frenzy at level 3, but the design differences from the old version are dramatic, to say the least. So first, let's talk about the feature this is replacing. And the old frenzy is not popular with players at all. So basically the way it would work is, when you raged with your barbarian, you could choose to frenzy instead of raging. And frenzy worked like rage, except you would be able to make a bonus action attack on your turns, and after the frenzy was over, you would gain a level of exhaustion. That's brutal, like absolutely brutal. So what you had are berserkers who aren't using their primary feature because they don't want to take the massive penalty for doing so. So now what we have is just so much cleaner. So our barbarian rages just as normal. And then whenever we make a reckless attack using strength, which should be most of the time, then it's a frenzied attack. And once we hit somebody with a frenzied attack, then they take a number of d6s equal to your rage damage bonus in additional damage. And of course, that will be doubled on a critical hit as well. And because it's just so likely we're going to hit somebody on our turn because we're making attacks with advantage, this is basically just straight out damage per round. So when we get this, it's 2d6, that's like 7 damage per round. And then it's going to be 10.5 damage per round. And finally, it'll be 14 damage per round. We're pretty darn close to that. So I think this is just a terrific change. At level 5, the Barbarian is getting extra attack and fast movement. These aren't changes from the old Barbarian. Obviously, they were good features then, and they're still good features. Then at level 6, we're back to subclass features. So back to the Berserker. Mindless Rage gives immunity to the charmed and frightened conditions while your rage is active, and if you're already charmed or frightened when you rage, then the condition ends. Now, the old Berserker had a similar feature at this level, which was truly the best feature the old Berserker got. What's changed here is that the old version suppressed the charmed or frightened conditions during your rage if you already had them when you raged. Now, they're ended, which I think is just cleaner. Though I think in practice, I don't think it'll make a difference most of the time. In the end, though, I like this on the old Berserker, I like this on the new Berserker. At level 7, the Barbarian gets Feral Instinct, which provides advantage on initiative rolls and dexterity saving throws. This actually combines 2 features the old Barbarian got, which was Feral Instinct at level 7, which gave advantage on initiative, and Danger Sense, which provided advantage on dexterity saving throws against effects you could see. Danger Sense was a level 2 feature. So this new Barbarian waits longer for the dexterity saving throw advantage, but I'm all for getting rid of that effects you can see limitation. This is easier to implement in game, and considering that the new Barbarian already got a replacement for Danger Sense with Primal Knowledge at level 2, this is another clear boost for the new Barbarian, and again, I really like it. At 9th level, the Barbarian gets Indomitable Might. If you make a strength check and the result is lower than your strength score, you can use that score in place of the total. The old Barbarian got this feature at level 18, and it was identical. But although they are identically worded, we should expect them to be applied differently. The old Barbarian is probably using Indomitable Might with grapple athletics checks. The new Barbarian won't be doing that, since in the playtest, grappling hasn't involved ability checks. This Barbarian will be using this for all the skills that became strength checks through Primal Knowledge. In either case, though, I don't think this is good. In fact, I think it's pretty bad. I guess I'm happier with it being a lower level feature rather than the insult of making this an 18th level feature. I do think it's better on the new Barbarian than the old one, and it's not like it's useless. But here's the thing. If we have a crappy strength score, because, I don't know, we figure we're going to focus on dexterity for unarmored defense or something, and I'm not recommending that, mind you, but I've seen it, then this is basically useless because our strength score likely won't meet the DC threshold anyways. But if we are building a typical Barbarian, well then our strength score might meet the DC threshold, so maybe we're making a perception roll with Primal Knowledge. This might ensure a success, and that could be valuable. But only if you fail the initial perception roll, which you're making using strength with advantage. So I just don't think you're going to fail all that often, meaning this won't come up very often. There's one case, though, specifically applying to the new Barbarian, where I think this could be particularly helpful, and that's with stealth checks. Barbarians often find themselves in half plate, which imposes disadvantage on stealth rolls. So you could be playing a 9th level Barbarian with half plate, and you wouldn't even need to be proficient in stealth. As long as you're using Primal Knowledge, you're guaranteed a good stealth check. Still, even with that in mind, I just don't think this is good enough for a 9th level feature. Then at 10th level, we're back to another feature for the Berserker. And that level 10 feature is Retaliation. And basically, if you are taking damage from somebody within 5 feet of you, then you can use your reaction to make one melee attack against that creature using a weapon or an unarmed strike. I think this should be dead easy to set up. It's basically going to mean that you're going to be making a reaction attack on most turns. The Barbarian tends to get targeted by attacks all the time, and you move within 5 feet of an enemy, and you're probably going to be taking damage from them. So, yeah, I think this is going to come up pretty consistently, and it's just going to be more attacks for you. Great. And we get Brutal Critical. The old Barbarian got Brutal Critical at level 9, but it was a bit different. In the case of the old Barbarian, you added 1 additional damage die when rolling critical hit damage. Scaled to 2 dice at level 13, and then 3 at level 17, and the scaling took the place of features. Like at level 17, when spellcasters get their 9th level spells, Barbarian's Brutal Critical scaled by 1 die. It was terrible. Now, when you score a critical hit with a weapon or an unarmed strike using strength, you deliver extra damage equal to your Barbarian level. So this is an improvement. First, the weapon doesn't matter anymore. The old Brutal Critical unnecessarily penalized mauls and greatswords. Now you crit, you deal the extra damage, even if it's with a d4 bonus attack from Polearm Master. Secondly, this is more damage. In the previous version, the best weapon you could use for this feature was a d12 weapon, which added an average of 6.5 extra damage on a critical. This adds 11. So this is improved, and that is appreciated, but as you'll see in the math later, this still doesn't add up to much. The issue is that criticals just don't happen often enough for this to add up. With Reckless Attack, we should expect to crit on about 10% of attacks, so the math is pretty easy. At level 11, that's an average of 1.1 extra damage per attack. Even if you have a lot of attacks, like not just extra attack, but a bonus action attack, maybe a cleave, a reaction attack, it's still maybe 5 damage on average per round. I don't, however, think it's a matter of just increasing the number. Like, you could use twice the Barbarian level, but then what you're really doing is just pushing the Barbarian player into gaming as many attacks as possible, trying to trigger the extra damage. So what I think they should do here is something a lot more radical. Here's what I would do. Rather than trying to turn this into a defining feature, I'd keep it as it is, but I'd get it out of the 11th level position. I'd move it back to level 9, and then I would replace Indomitable Might with this, and then I'd just get rid of Indomitable Might altogether. Then design some new feature to sit here at 11th level that's more in line with the significant features that other classes often receive at this level. And I'm going to be a bit more radical. It wouldn't even need to be a damage feature. So I was doing some brainstorming about this. What kind of defining feature could we put for a Barbarian that's not damage based? And I was reminded of the first edition Barbarian. This is Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and the Barbarian was introduced in, appropriately, the Unearthed Arcana book. And they were presented as these kind of anti-magic warriors. They would get extra experience if they destroyed magic items. Now, I'm not recommending we do that. That would be terrible. But what if the Barbarian had some, inner ability to fight against magic? So, if they attack a spell effect and hit it, the spell effect is dispelled. Or if they hit a creature, they could dispel a spell effect on that creature. And you would need some kind of limitation. Maybe it's once per turn, maybe it's once per combat. But something like that could really define the Barbarian. And I also think it kind of fits with the idea of Conan, because Conan would always fight against mages, and he would fight his way through their spells till he got to them and he killed them. Did that all the time. So that's one possible idea. And I'm not sure it's the best idea, but it's the idea I came up with. But with enough people and enough thoughts, I bet you they could come up with something at level 11 that would set the Barbarian apart, be really just kind of a class-defining feature, and be appropriate for 11th level feature. And if anyone on the Wizards of the Coast design team happens to be watching this video, I just want you to know that please feel free to use any ideas I present. Well, that's more time than I expected to take on that, so let's move on to 13th level and Persistent Rage. Now your rage lasts 10 minutes without needing to attack or expend bonus actions or force saving throws. Still ends early if you're incapacitated or you don heavy armor. Again, apparently they're concerned that your Barbarian might put on heavy armor. Let me know down below, have you ever seen a Barbarian rage and then put on heavy armor somehow after the rage starts? I mean, I've seen a loophole where a Bear Totem Barbarian just wears heavy armor because the wording of their rage feature doesn't prohibit heavy armor, but this idea that the Barbarian rages and then puts on heavy armor afterwards is just something I've never seen or heard about. Now, I have to say, I'm not a huge fan of this, and the reason I'm not is because I think it's going to be pretty easy to maintain your rage anyways if you're not incapacitated. You can use your bonus action to maintain your rage if you're not attacking or forcing saving throws. Of course, you'll usually be attacking unless you're outside of combat, and if you're outside of combat, then your bonus action should be available. And now that you can lose your rage when you're incapacitated, and this does not prevent that, I don't think this is providing you all that much benefit. Now, if this allowed you to maintain your rage while you're incapacitated, then that could be pretty valuable. But as it is, this is pretty lackluster. I don't see why I'd be excited to get this feature. Then at 14th level is the final subclass feature, so back to the Berserker. So we get Intimidating Presence, and this is nothing like the terrible Intimidating Presence of the old Barbarian. So I'm not going to bother pointing out all the differences. That one was awful. This one isn't awful. You can use your action, and each creature of your choice within 30 feet, or 60 if your rage is active, makes a wisdom saving throw with a DC based on your strength modifier, or they're frightened for up to a minute with an additional saving throw provided to end the condition at the end of their turns. The first use of this is free, but if you want to use it again, you have to expend a use of rage. So there's a few things that stand out to me. First, because this requires a saving throw, it extends your rage. So you don't need to expend your bonus action to do that. Now, I'm not sure what you're using your bonus action for, but it's available if you have something. Another thing that stands out is at 14th level, the Frightened condition isn't all that exciting. Number of creatures are going to be immune to it, and this isn't doing anything but applying the condition. So creatures that fail don't have to drop what they're holding and run away or anything. Finally, the range on this is tremendous. Assuming you're raging, 60 feet in all directions is massive. So here it is on a battle map. So our Barbarian is right here, and this blue aura around them is 60 feet. I don't think this feature is going to be great most of the time, but there are times it could be. Basically, if the enemies aren't immune and you can get a lot of them at once, in those cases, this could be terrific. Overall, though, I don't see those cases coming up so much that I'd call this a good feature overall. This does actually remind me of the 9th level Observe Foes feature of the new Paladin. They aren't the same, but there are similarities. That one had a cool mechanic where if a creature made their saving throw, they were still dazed. Something like that could be cool here as well. At 15th level, the Barbarian gets Relentless Rage, which allows the Raging Barbarian a Constitution saving throw if they drop to 0 hit points, and if they make it, they recover hit points immediately equal to twice the Barbarian level. So that'd be 30 hit points at this level. The DC is an easy 10, but each time you use it, the DC increases by 5, and then it resets to 10 after a short or long rest. The old Barbarian had this feature at level 11, but instead of giving you twice your Barbarian level in hit points, you got 1 hit point. I've never really liked that feature, and actually even with this boost, I'm still not excited. For one thing, this is something else to keep track of, this ever-increasing DC. I just don't like that mechanic. The other thing is twice your Barbarian level is way more than 1 hit point to be sure, but your 15th level Barbarian probably has a hit point maximum well over 100 and maybe approaching 200. So 30 just isn't all that much. This isn't terrible or anything, but it is not to my taste. This certainly isn't an incentive for me to strive for a 15th level Barbarian. At 17th level, the Barbarian gets Rage Resurgence, where they regain an expended use of Rage whenever they roll initiative. This is a new feature. The old Barbarian didn't have anything like this until suddenly at 20th level, they could rage as often as they liked. I like the idea of padding rage uses, but I think this too could use some spice. This is 17th level. Like, here's a thought. What if, whenever you roll initiative, you automatically are raging for free? No bonus action, you roll initiative, and you're raging. That's something I could be excited for. Then at 18th level, the Barbarian gets Primal Champion, and their strength and dexterity increase by 2, and now they have a maximum of 22 for both of those scores. Now, what I don't get is why the Barbarian is getting such a nerf at high levels compared to the other new classes. Because the other new classes, what they're doing is they're taking their old capstones at level 20, and then they move them to level 18. But here what they've done is they've watered down the capstone and split it between 2 features. So our feature at 17th level and our feature here at 18th level combine to make a very nerfed version of the old Barbarian's capstone, which was unlimited rages and +4 to strength and dexterity and increasing the maximums to 24. So if we look at our level 17 feature, which gives us like 1 extra rage per combat, and our 18th level feature, which is giving us 2 for these 2 scores, it adds up to basically about half of the Barbarian capstone. And for all the other new classes, you look at level 18 and they get 1 feature that was their entire capstone. Now I get that the Barbarian had a really nice capstone, but this is a lot of watering down. And what I'm seeing, you might notice I've had a change in tone since about level 7, because the Barbarian's early level features here are all terrific. But now we get into the double-digit levels, and they're not. So I'm trying to figure out why I would want to do a single-class Barbarian into the double-digit levels, when I could just multi-class out and get better features. So I do think this needs to be addressed. What we need with the Barbarian is these higher-level features need something done to them to make it so that if I want to play a single-class Barbarian, I'm not penalized. Because I have nothing against multiclassing. I'm all for multiclassing. I just don't think it should be the default option. I think you should be good for multiclassing, and you should be good if you want to go straight classed. And then at level 20, the Barbarian gets the Epic Boon, just like all the other new classes. So with the Barbarian overall, I'd say when I look at those lower levels, I think the Barbarian is just so much better than the 5th edition version. And because the high levels are bad for the old Barbarian, it remains better for the full 20 levels. And yes, it can dish out the damage. I am going to show you the math on that. But what I find with the old Barbarian is you reach a certain level and there's just nothing exciting afterwards. So you continue with Barbarian and you're just not getting anything that really excites you. And I am seeing the same problem with this Barbarian. Yeah, those earlier levels are even better. But once we get into these double-digit levels, there's nothing really here that is going to grab you, that's going to be making you excited to get to the next level. Maybe the Epic Boon at level 20. So I do think that there needs to be some redesign to make the Barbarians more interesting at these double-digit levels. Give them some new tricks or something like that. Because, yeah, there's just not a lot here. It's pretty disappointing when you get to 11th level and you get Brutal Critical and it comes into play so little that it doesn't end up doing a whole lot, and that's an 11th level feature. But then we get into things like Persistent Rage, and it's just not delivering that much. and so they need to find a way to make these features more interesting. So that will be my feedback to them. But let's talk a little bit about, I said these guys could dish out the damage, let me show you. So with the fighter, I compared two 13th level builds, doing like halberd builds, and I made them both humans. And I figured maybe I'll do the same thing with barbarians, so then not only can we, compare the old barbarian and new barbarian, but we can actually compare them to the fighters as well. So with the old barbarian, we will take variant human. That will be a strength of 16 to start. Then we're going to have 4 feats. So we'll take Great Weapon Master and Sentinel, and then we'll increase our strength twice. So we get it up to 20. Then we'll have 5 rages, and we're going to have a rage bonus to damage of +3, reckless attack, unarmored defense, danger sense, frenzy, fast movement, feral instinct, 2 dice from brutal critical, and relentless rage. So our attacks will be 3 per round, 2 regular attacks and 1 with a bonus action attack. Then we'll use reckless, and we'll use Great Weapon Master for the -5 +10. So a halberd, on average, does 5.5 damage. Then we're adding 5 from strength, 10 from Great Weapon Master, and 3 from rage. So that's 23.5. And we're going to have a 58% chance to hit for 23.5 damage. So that ends up being 13.63 on average per attack. And then we have a 10% chance to critical hit, and we're going to do 16.5 average extra damage on a critical hit because of the 2 extra dice. So that ends up being 1.65 per attack. So add those together, and it's 15.28 per attack. Now on round 1, we're going to have to rage, so that's going to be a bonus action. So we're only going to have 2 attacks, and so we'll do 30.56 damage. But then round 2 and later, we can do 45.84 damage per round. Now, there are a couple things I should mention here. The old Berserker, the 5th edition Berserker, is awful. So if I'm going to compare the new Barbarian to the old Barbarian, why am I choosing the worst subclass for Barbarian? Well, because the Berserker is the one that got updated. So that's why I do think if we took a different Barbarian subclass, it would probably perform better. The other thing is, if I'm making a bonus action attack, and I'm assuming Frenzy here, so we're just going to give the Barbarian Frenzy, even though Frenzy has that big downside. Maybe I should be looking at a different weapon other than the halberd. Maybe I should be looking at a D12 weapon, like a great axe or something. But if I did that, then I'm not comparing halberd to halberd, and I used halberd for the fighter as well. So we get reach with that, and we're doing a D10. If we did do a D12 weapon, we'd probably be looking at about 3 more damage. So you can keep that in mind with the comparison. Now we're going to look at the new Barbarian. All right, so we're going to go human. Now we can have a +2 strength. So we'll start with a strength of 17. And we will have 5 feats, 2 of them at first level, and then 3 additional feats. So our first level feats, I took Savage Attacker and Skilled. And then with our additional 3 feats, I'm taking Great Weapon Master, Sentinel, and Polar Master. And all 3 are going to increase our strength by 1, so we don't have to do ASIs. We can just take feats, and we can get our strength up to 20. And that's a big advantage. It was an advantage for the new fighter. It's an advantage for the new barbarian. Still have 5 rages, still +3 damage from rage. We're going to have 4 weapon masteries. Then we'll have unarmored defense, primal knowledge, reckless attack, fast movement, frenzy, feral instinct, indomitable might, brutal critical, and relentless rage. So our attacks. So our action attacks will be 5.5, which is the average damage for a halberd, plus 5 for strength, plus 3 for rage is 13.5 per attack. So there's 2 of those. And then our bonus action attack is an average of 2.5 on the D4, plus 5 from strength and 3 from rage, averages 10.5. So 2 at 13.5, 1 at 10.5. So let's take our chance to hit into account. So we have 84% chance to hit times 13.5 average damage is 11.34. Then 10% chance to crit, which will do an additional 18.5 damage on average for 1.85. So our attack action attacks do 11.34 plus 1.85 each, or 13.19. So we take that, multiply it by 2, that's 26.38. Now we have our bonus action attack, and that's 84% chance to hit, times 10.5 is 8.82. Then for critting, 10% times 15.5 additional damage, that's 1.55. So we add those together for 10.37. and we take the 26.38 from our attack action and 10.37 from our bonus action, and we're sitting right now at 36.75. But we're not done. Now we have Great Weapon Master, and our chance to hit at least once on a turn is, get this, 99.6%. So when I said earlier in the video that we're almost certain to hit once, yeah, we are almost certain to hit once. And so we do 0.996 times 5 extra damage from Great Weapon Master is 4.98, and now our damage is up to 41.73. Then I did something really dumb on this build that I regret now, but I took the Savage Attacker feat. That does technically increase our damage. The way Savage Attacker works is on one attack during your turn, you can roll 2 dice for damage and take the better result. So if I miss with my first attack, then I'm applying Savage Attacker on my second attack. If I miss with my second attack, then I'm applying it on my bonus action attack. So I have to work out all this math for what is going to be 1.61 damage, but there it is on your screen, and that brings us up to 43.34. Now we need to look at our weapon mastery, which is Cleave, and I used Cleave on my previous fighter build, and I said that the conditions, we'd probably meet them maybe 50% of the time. That was a guess, and definitely I had some comments from people thinking it would probably be less than 50% of the time, so keep that in mind as you look at these numbers. But 50% of the time times 84% chance to hit times 8.5 average damage is 3.57, and then 50% chance of cleaving times 10% chance to crit times 18.5 additional critical hit damage is 0.93. That's 4.5 altogether. Add that to 43.34 plus 4.45 is 47.84. And so just keep in mind, if you don't think cleave is going to happen as often, that 4.5 might be lower. But, I mean, it's 4.5. It's not a big number, so I don't think it's going to make a big difference either way. We're a couple points ahead of the other Barbarian on round 2 already. Now, is this only going to be on round 2? Well, that depends. Because with the new Barbarian, we can rage for 10 minutes, we can rage outside of combat, so it's entirely possible we could start a combat and already be raging, in which case I would expect 47.84 damage on round 1. Now, if we do need to rage at the start of the combat, I would expect the damage to be about 13 points lower. It is a little hard to calculate because I'd have to go back and redo Great Weapon Master and redo Savage Attacker and all this stuff, and it wouldn't make much difference. It'd be about 13 points less. Now, you might say it's a little unfair to be comparing Berserker to Berserker because the old Berserker isn't very good. Except this number already beats the old Berserker, and I haven't added anything from the new Berserker yet. So that's telling me that this Barbarian is just performing better than the old one. But let's add Berserker. So we have Frenzy damage. Like I said, 99.6% chance we'll hit at least once. 10.5 additional damage at this level is 10.46, and our total shoots up to 58.3. So the new Berserker, if there's any question whether it delivers good damage, you just saw the difference here. This is just from Berserker damage. Speaking of Berserker, I considered whether I should be adding additional reaction attack damage because I would expect this Berserker to be making more reaction attacks than anyone else. But you know what? I didn't add any reaction attack damage to the old Barbarian or to the fighters when I did that analysis. So I think it would be a little bit skewing if I added it here. So what I think I'm going to do is leave it off because I don't think it's necessary to draw conclusions. We've got 58.3 DPR versus 45.84 from the old Barbarian. And even without our subclass, we're still out-damaging the old Barbarian. And the old fighter, 29.64, very similar build. Or 54.24 with advantage, still below our DPR. Then the new fighter was doing 50.44 DPR, which was good. But this is even better. So you get the Berserker on top of this Barbarian. It is a lot of damage. Now, I will say that there are fighter subclasses you could take other than Champion that I think could increase that new fighter damage and get it more in line with the Barbarian. I think they end up fairly close in damage potential if we take subclasses that are damage-centric. So one thing that got commented on my fighter video is that these numbers may be cherry-picked because I'm only showing the math for one kind of build, a halberd build, with one particular level. So I want to add here that All the math that I calculated, I've presented to you. So it's not like I compared numbers across the board and then picked a snapshot where I thought the new classes perform better. I picked a level and I picked a build and I punched the math, and I can't guarantee that we would see the same comparisons across all 20 levels with every kind of build. However, what I think this snapshot does demonstrate is we can probably set aside the concerns that the loss of the -5 to hit for plus 10 damage mechanic would mean that the new warriors would not be delivering good damage. Honestly, that's the question I had, and I'm satisfied that I can put that concern to rest given these results. But I will say my instincts say that we would probably see a universal increase to damage with these new warriors compared to the old versions at any level with any kind of build. And that's because of three things I noticed when I did these calculations. The first is that the new feats being half feats just makes it a lot easier to specialize while still increasing your primary ability score. That's a huge benefit of the new rules. The second is that weapon mastery is pretty good, and the old warriors don't have it. And the third is, I think the once per turn damage bonuses get undervalued. Look how much damage Frenzy added here. Look how much damage Great Weapon Master's adding, even without the -5 plus 10 mechanic. So although I can't be 100% certain without doing a whole lot of math, I am fairly confident the new warriors simply outperform the old ones. Now I'm going to wrap this up, and I think we can draw some conclusions. First off, the Berserker subclass, the new one, really delivers. I was really happy with it. The Barbarian itself also really delivers when it comes to damage. There's just no question about it. It makes up for the fact that the -5 plus 10 options aren't there anymore. However, I don't see a lot of incentive to continue with Barbarian into high levels because there's no features there to really look forward to. And I do think that's a mistake, and I hope it gets addressed in the next playtest. However, the Barbarian is perfectly playable, and if you want to deliver damage, it actually looks like it might be the best option, even better than a fighter. Now, for regular viewers, you might notice I release this video on a Wednesday when I normally do Monday and Fridays. That's because I want to squeeze in some extra videos because this playtest is new. So before I start talking about the casters, which will be my next more in-depth videos, I'm going to do a shorter video on Friday so I can get 3 squeezed into this week. So on Friday, I'm going to be releasing another video where I talk about weapon mastery properties. Now that I've deep dived further into the 2 presented classes with this feature built in and played around with the math a bit, I think I have more insight on the relative power levels and what kinds of rebalancing I'd like to see in the different weapon masteries. So that video will come on Friday, and then I'll dive into spellcasting classes next week. Hope you'll join me, but until next time, I'm going to sit back, relax, and have some fun. D&D is for everyone. Thanks everybody, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you to Hey Mr. Wonderful, Arden, Babrak, Blue Wolf, Blue Eyes White 7, Condor, John D, Descarpus 9, El Conquistadorito, Eric H, Falcon Neal, Glenn Wilson, Jared Huberger, John Wayne, Joseph Hall, Joseph Robideau, Joseph Rogers, Joshua Doring, Wu Carl Kong, Lila Corpsegrave, Makatu, Lone Pilgrim, Maddie, Michael Michelle, Moxie, Nemo, Prometheo NTG, Purge Thunder, Reichenstahl, Ryan Wilmot, Samwise, Shane and Todd Beyond, Earshine, The Noam Chomsky, Third, Valentine, and Wade.